The presidential election of 1800 provided Alexander Hamilton, former Secretary of the Treasury, with a dilemma: a tie between Thomas Jefferson, a man whose principles were in direct opposition to Hamilton's own, and Aaron Burr, a man Hamilton believed to have no principles at all. As the House of Representatives prepared to vote to break the deadlock, Hamilton conducted a furious letter-writing campaign to urge fellow Federalists to vote for Jefferson. In this letter to Harrison Gray Otis, a Massachusetts congressman, Hamilton writes that, quote, "In a choice of evils, let them take the least. Jefferson is in every view less dangerous than Burr." He continued, "Mr. Jefferson, though too revolutionary in his notions, is yet a lover of liberty and will be desirous of something like orderly government. Mr. Burr loves nothing but himself, thinks of nothing but his own aggrandizement, will be content with nothing short of permanent power in his own hands. No compact that he should make with any passion in his breast except ambition could be relied upon by himself. How then should we be able to rely upon any agreement with him? Mr. Jefferson, I suspect, will not dare much. Mr. Burr will dare everything, in the sanguine hope of effecting everything."
Aaron Burr!
You know, I made that reference. I made the reference to the commercial in class.
Yeah, we watched it in class. The Got Milk commercial?
Oh, I just referenced it, and all my students just stared at me. I said,
no,
ask your parents.
Right,
We
it's
watched
like,
it.
What, Got Milk? You guys? And there was like one or two kids who were like, "Oh, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about." And I was like, "Well, explain yourself." And they did. And so they did.
If you have no idea what we're talking about, just YouTube Aaron Burr Got Milk commercial.
Yeah, classic.
Aaron Burr! Okay, so yeah, the election of 1800. To me, in my opinion, this is one of the most important. No, I'm going to say it. The most important moment in American history.
It's a brave
Wow.
stance.
Because for the first time, certainly in American history, but I would say really probably modern world history, we have a peaceful transfer of power between two political opponents. And this was when it went to the House of Representatives, after Aaron Burr and Jefferson got the same amount of electoral votes, 73 to be exact, apiece, things were not good in the United States. I mean, there were militias called out, there were riots. You know, we think of today as being concerned about political unrest, but I mean, as we'll see throughout the 19th century, there's quite a bit of it. And we didn't have the system yet. We didn't have the 12th Amendment where people where electors of the Electoral College would cast their votes separately for president and vice president. So Aaron Burr wasn't even a presidential nominee. He was a vice presidential candidate for Jefferson. Jefferson. And so anyway, goes to the House of Representatives, goes to 36 votes, 36 separate times that the House of Representatives had to vote because neither candidate could get a majority. So there's this moment, I don't know exactly how long it lasts, but there's this a couple of days for sure, of just this unknown of who's going to be our next president. And all the while, the outgoing president was a Federalist. And whatever incoming president is going to be will be a Democratic Republican. So that unrest about who will be the next president, and then finally figuring it out after the 36th ballot, and John Adams, a Federalist, willingly giving power to a Democratic Republican, his opponent, which, as we'll see, was very saucy in the late 1790s between these two guys. This is a huge moment.
Yeah, and to really understand how we get to this so important election, we're going to have an episode here where we first go back to picking up where the framers left off in Independence Hall. We're going to talk about ratification of the new Constitution and how that fight really rages across the country. We're looking at how newspapers and Federalist papers and all kinds of papers really were arguing about which interpretation of the Constitution should reign supreme, which version of government was actually what Americans wanted. So spoiler, we know that the Constitution is going to get ratified, and it's a brilliant piece of governmental organization. but it's also kind of vague, and it's going to leave a lot of questions in place. And soon after, we're going to see the rise of this Federalist and anti-Federalist, soon-to-be Democratic-Republican political parties that are going to clash. And ultimately, the bold moves by Alexander Hamilton to create a new financial system, which leads to just more partisan warfare. We're going to have whiskey rebellion on the frontier, crises that span across the globe, and then finally even some crackdowns on the possibility of freedom of speech.
And don't forget 2 other things. Wool coats and no deodorant in tight rooms.
Ugh.
It smelled.
This is going to be intense. Let's go.
So by 1787, the Articles of Confederation were kind of in shambles. Well, they needed some tweaking at the very least. Shays' Rebellion rattled the elites. Interstate trade was pretty chaotic, and foreign powers poked at American weakness. Reformers met in Philadelphia, again with no deodorant, but with wool coats on, and produced a whole new frame of government. Cue the biggest sales job in American history, the ratification of the Constitution.
Got to get that Constitution. Got to get that Constitution. Got to get that Constitution. So anti-federalists, they smell a power grab here. They're a little suspect about what is in this new Constitution, and they worry that the new national government, especially Congress's taxing power, and a potential imperial presidency, meaning anytime imperial is used with the president, that means a president who takes a lot of power unilaterally by himself or by the executive branch. And
or
also,
by herself.
Or by herself, yes, thank you. And seeks to expand that power not only in the United States, but also outside of the United States. And these 2 things, Congress's new taxing power and the fear of this large executive, would swallow state sovereignty and citizen liberty. This is what the anti-federalists were worried about. And so, little known fact, maybe for our listeners, is that the anti-federalists also had their own writings. They weren't as organized as the Federalists, but one of the probably most famous anti-federalist writings was a pamphlet written by Brutus, Brutus I, which is a pseudonym. And this hammered that a large republic would be unresponsive and too prone to the consolidation of power.
And so the Federalists countered in a collection of essays that would become basically political canon and known as the Federalist Papers.
Canon.
There's a lot of them, but the 2 most famous that people generally point to, and we made reference to these last episode, was Federalist 10 and Federalist 51. And in Federalist 10, Madison pitched this idea that a large extended republic is actually a solution to the spread of factionalism because you'd have so many spread out and competitive interests that they'd ultimately check each other and prevent one group from securing dominance over another. And in Fed 51, he argued that the Constitution baked in this idea of ambition versus ambition as safeguards across the branches, otherwise known as checks and balances.
Just an update. My students did say that they used the Federalist 51 line at homecoming.
No, great.
They did say, if men were angels, no government would be necessary.
That's
And then
that's a thing going around school.
Walked away from them and never talked to them again.
They did say it didn't really land.
Okay.
They were
Well,
never invited back to any parties.
But they were excited to
whatsoever.
tell me.
At least they tried.
Hey,
Yes.
you know what? So, but Fed, I like what you said. Fed 51. It's a, I don't know. It's a cool way to say it.
That's what you said last week. Yeah, that it's like we're in the
You
know.
know, like cut down on the syllables. Fed 51. Right. It sounds like it could be a reality TV show.
So many syllables, so little time.
Where did that go? Okay. So here's a political reality. Many ratifying conventions were squeakers. What helped tip the balance? A promise that the very first Congress would add a Bill of Rights. The idea wasn't just symbolic. State ratification debates had surfaced specific anxieties about press, religion, jury trials, and the specter of standing armies, all of these things that they had experienced in the run-up to the Revolution. The compromise landed, the Constitution went through, and the first 10 amendments arrived in 1791.
And just a quick note on the design of the actual document. If you've never read it, you should. It's pretty short. It was very specific on some mechanics, such as the idea of bicameralism. So now we have two houses in our legislature, the House of Representatives and the Senate, meaning Congress. Also enumerated powers, meaning powers that are literally spelled out. They're numbered and, 1, 2, 3, 4. Having a single executive in the name of a president. But some big questions were left open. There's one clause in in Article 1, which is about the legislative branch, and it says basically that the legislative branch can make any laws which are necessary and proper. And sometimes this is called the elastic clause because it stretches Congress's power quite a bit. It's like my pants on Thanksgiving. I need to have that room. And this was very concerning. And also, the question of executive power. Was there foreign policy power too broad, too narrow? How far do implied powers go? Implied meaning that they're not, like necessary and proper would be an implied power that, what does that mean? This vagueness, it's a feature that invited political debate and conflict.
So we know George Washington enters the arena as America's first president.
Yeah, he does.
So, yeah, he does. And his administration, though, it needs a blueprint. There's nothing before, right? You have nothing to go on. So he needs someone to help him kind of construct what this whole thing's going to look like. And here comes Alexander Hamilton, the famous Alexander Hamilton from Broadway musical lore.
Yep, that one.
So Hamilton is the first Secretary of Treasury, and he is going to start creating a program to really turbocharge the national economy, and his focus really is to bind elites to the new regime of the Washington administration.
So, Plan 1, assume states' debts. Ooh, I can't even hear that in the musical. Assume states' debts. Now, take your bets on who
benefits.
Who the government that I can't do it. I'm not
the very
Diggs.
seat of government where Hamilton sits. Not true. If the shoe fits, wear it. If New York's in debt, why should Virginia bear it?
Oh my God!
It's
You should be on Broadway.
Coolest kids in the room who are rapping to Hamilton as I'm teaching. They're always my favorite.
Well,
Just
back
shut
to
up.
the state debts thing and funding the national debt at par. Credit worthiness at home and abroad. We went into in class when we talked about credit and stuff and that. We went into a great financial lesson about when you get credit cards and what lending companies really want you to have. They don't want you to have the absence of credit. They want you to see credit being taken care of responsibly. And I felt like we had a really good discussion about
I use that same example. I think it helps make the whole...
Did you use it, Miss Kelton?
She probably
I didn't.
No, she was too busy going, wah, wah, wah.
Now I'm thinking...
She was probably out the golf course,
I've ruined them.
Abandoning her class.
I've ruined my students and their financial literacy.
That's what this podcast is for.
Yes.
To help out your
financial
students.
literacy. So creditworthiness, as I was saying, would anchor the nation's financial reputation and create stakeholders for the federal government. So forever, the states would have to be tethered to whatever was going on with the national economy. So Plan 2 would charter a Bank of the United States to stabilize the currency and to coordinate that credit. Plan 3 would encourage manufacturing through targeted policies, envisioning a diverse, dynamic economy rather than agriculture alone.
Here's the issue on the table. Wow, Mr. Hill almost spit out his coffee.
Because I'm following the music.
We are recording in the morning again. I had to bring everybody coffee. Sorry.
You know what?
I like morning recording.
Cheers.
I love that you...
Look me in the eyes.
Uh-oh. Thanks for the coffee.
Did you try your Americano?
It's very nice.
Yeah, I got the blonde espresso. Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, don't spill it. Okay. The issue is that the Bank of the United States, this is not written into the Constitution anywhere word for word. And so Hamilton justified this using that elastic clause I was just talking about, the necessary and proper clause that even though the bank isn't specifically listed, he said it would be necessary and proper for the United States to have a sound financial system. A bank would be included in that, and this basically allows the constitutionality of the bank. Now, this is a loose interpretation of the Constitution, meaning that if it's not directly said in it, Hamilton, it was implied, it was inferred based on some clauses. Other people are going to have a very strict interpretation or construction of the Constitution.
Right. And speaking of those who preferred a strict interpretation, here's Thomas Jefferson and Madison, and that's where the opposition is going to coalesce. And it's these two kind of leaders of the movement against Hamilton who feared a bank and debt regime, which really would just enrich financial speculators, further centralize power, and tilt America toward more of a British-style finance capitalism, which, in truth, that really was Hamilton's inspiration. But
absolutely.
But also, it kind of worked.
It kind of worked.
So their alternative vision, though, is a republic of yeoman farmers. We mentioned this.
Yeoman?
Yeoman.
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 I think it's yeoman.
But what they are is
kind of like
human.
Canadian.
They are human and they are yeoman. So together they're kind of yeoman.
Can you say it again?
No, I don't feel.
Say it one more time.
No, I don't need to.
Yeoman.
So these farmers, we mentioned these individuals last time. Jefferson preferred them because they are independent landowners who don't have to rely on others for their pay or for their political positions. And these farmers would enjoy low debt, limited government, and on the foreign policy side would prefer, instead of the British, more of the new French Revolutionary Republic. And this ideological split is going to really break down into these new political organizations, and we call this the first party system: Federalists and Democratic-Republicans, although sometimes they're called just Republicans, and they confusingly have nothing to do
Just to confuse you further.
Right. Nothing to do with the modern Democratic Party, really, sort of, but nothing to do with really the Republican Party of modern day times. But still, Federalists, Democratic Republicans, and Washington there is kind of stuck in the middle going, oh boy, here we go.
Oh boy. Yeah, the history of political parties is not a linear one. It takes a circuitous course.
Oh my gosh.
Circuitous.
Okay, wait. Is that what
Word of the episode.
Circuitous. Nah, that didn't really land. Wait.
Do it one more time.
Circuitous.
There we go.
Oh, yes.
Hard T. That was the key. Okay, so and we all know this. Politics is the art of the deal. The famous dinner table bargain, memorialized in lore and letters, led to a compromise. So Jefferson and Madison would agree not to block Hamilton's Assumption plan, but in return, the national capital moved to the Potomac, paving the way for Washington, D.C. to rise.
A literal swamp. So we have a lot of debt to pay off. We need revenue to pay off all of our Revolutionary War debts that have now been assumed into one national debt. And that revenue has to come from somewhere. So in 1791, Congress is going to pass an excise, which is a tax on distilled spirits, and this is going to be called the whiskey tax, which is going to hit small Western producers hard because a lot of these farmers would convert their grain into whiskey because it was easier to transport. It lasted a very long time, and they could use it for bartering purposes. They could sell it, and they see this tax as a direct shot at their livelihoods. And, remember that we've just fought an American Revolution over taxes, taxation without representation. And so just this idea of a tax that is targeting a specific group is very much despised all throughout the nation.
And by 1794, a lot of the resistance is in western Pennsylvania. It started to escalate. Intimidation of tax collectors at the very least, torching property, and talking of secession at the most. Washington determined to show that the Constitution wasn't just the Articles 2.0, federalized a military force of nearly 13,000 troops. Alexander Hamilton wrote out with part of the column, the show of force worked and the Whiskey Rebellion fizzled without a pitched battle. A few arrests, 2 convictions, later pardoned, but no real violence.
Yeah, and that just goes to show the power of a strong central government.
Can you imagine today the president of the United States writing out with a column?
No, well, it never happened again.
No, it hasn't happened since.
It happened one time, and one time only.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking any president in the
Yeah.
modern era. Can you imagine it? I mean, we would be shocked by that.
Who do you think would be I guess it would be, in the modern era, probably Teddy Roosevelt, because he liked riding
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
horses.
my God.
He would have been the best.
You wouldn't even have to have a reason. People would
No.
just go, can you get on a horse and we'll
Yeah.
film you?
He
And
would
you'd
have done
be
it.
like,
Yeah,
okay, get
for
out of my
sure.
way. Okay.
And maybe Taft would have been the worst because
Don't start.
well, I'm just saying.
No body shaming.
At least for the horse.
No
bad for the
body
horse.
shaming.
Okay, so let's the takeaway here. The federal government demonstrates it can enforce laws, it can maintain order. Protests are going to have to operate within constitutional channels. So that's the first real challenge. Let's move on to foreign policy.
So abroad, the 1790s were a hurricane. Revolutionary France at war with Britain. Both powers hassled American ships. And Washington wanted neutrality, preserve trade, avoid war.
So in 1794, the United States is going to enter into Jay's Treaty because it was bartered by John Jay with Britain. And this is going to draw outrage at home because we just fought a war against Britain. Now it seems like we're, being chummy with them. And the pros of this treaty are that the British finally promised to leave frontier forts in the United States, and they're going to offer pretty limited commercial concessions. The cons to this is that there's nothing concrete on the naval impressment of our sailors, that the British Navy was impressing our sailors. They were taking them and forcing them to serve in the British Navy, which was not a place that you wanted to be. And they weren't respecting our neutral rights, that we decided we're not getting into this. We're not being on France's side or Britain's side. And they weren't really respecting that. And this really felt like appeasement to many, that we were just simply appeasing Britain. And but the treaty still averted war, with the world's dominant navy. So that was good for us.
Yeah, and Spain, of course, is watching on the sidelines. They get a little nervous. Is Britain and America starting to form this new alignment in North America? And so the result was that America quickly said, "Hey, in 1795, let's chill out Spain." And Pinckney's treaty, the U.S. is going to get free navigation of the Mississippi, the mighty Mississippi, such an important river, and the right of deposit at New Orleans. A clear 31st parallel boundary with Spanish Florida. So all this eases tensions, and the United States is able to allow Western farmers to kind of feel like they don't have any fears from encroaching Spain or Britain. And it looks like neutrality is really the policy on the table.
Ah, yes, the 31st parallel boundary, of course.
Of course.
But this neutrality is going to be a theme of George Washington's. And when he leaves office, this is, again, one of the greatest things that a politician has ever done, is he decides after 2 terms he is going to go home. He's going to go home to Mount Vernon, and he is willingly giving up power.
The American Cincinnatus.
Yes, again, amazing, amazing moment. But he does issue a farewell address, which was largely written by Hamilton in 1796, and he's going to warn about 2 things. And I have to say, the College Board loves the farewell address, so pay attention.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Oops. Washington is going to warn about entangling and permanent alliances. So he's going to warn us about foreign policy, saying, you know what? Stay out of Europe's business. They're always fighting. Britain and France are always at war with each other, and just stay out of it. The second thing he's going to warn is about factions, right? We heard about this in Federalist 10. And the irony of this is that parties were really already entrenched, that the Federalists were in existence. The Democratic-Republicans, maybe not in name yet by 1796, but they are coming to the forefront. And so we didn't listen to him at all. The idea about staying out of foreign relations and no political parties. Sorry, George. So he leaves, and we have a new election in 1796, and this is going to produce kind of a constitutional oddity. We've got John Adams on the Federalist side. He had been George Washington's vice president. he's going to win against runner-up Thomas Jefferson. And now we're really seeing those parties form. Like John Adams is clearly the leader of the Federalist Party. Thomas Jefferson is clearly the leader of the Democratic-Republicans. But Thomas Jefferson is going to become vice president. So you have these two in office who don't see eye to eye on anything. And imagine sharing that executive branch with your rival. It made governing pretty awkward.
Awkward. So Bonnie Johnny Adams, actually he wasn't Bonnie, probably. He had a kind of a weird haircut. But he inherits a mess with France, which was seizing U.S. ships. American envoys seeking negotiation were approached by intermediaries, later dubbed X, Y, and Z, very, very Jason Bourne, very hush-hush, who hinted at bribes. Yeah, we just don't do that in American politics. My God.
Yeah, apparently that was just really common at the time in France. They're like, what?
Remember when we used to have
We're
bribes?
not working for free.
And there was no political corruption? God, that was weird. Outrage exploded at home. The phrase, millions for defense, not 1 cent for tribute. I don't know how that would really land on a protest poster today, but anyway, it was what it was. That was kind of capturing the mood. And so the undeclared quasi-war, 1798 to 1800, with France, raged at sea. The U.S. Navy, just reconstituted, scored notable victories.
So this crisis politics is going to lead to a lot of overreach. And in 1798, as it always does, I guess we should say, anytime there's any type of foreign policy crisis, it seems like there's an attempt to expand power. And in 1798, the Federalist Congress passed the Alien and Sedition Act, which, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the most dangerous moments in all of American history. The alien laws it's not about, aliens from outer space, which sometimes students get confused about. But
Wait, you guys want to hear my
Yes.
my alien ship
Yep.
approaching?
Wow. That was not the sound machine. That was Mr. Hill.
People aren't going to believe that. They're going to think that was a digital effect.
That's okay. So let them believe what they want.
So the alien laws were really worried about, first, altering the process of naturalization, but in more importantly, they allowed the president to detain or deport non-citizens from hostile nations, meaning, for the most part, French radicals who were in the United States and wanted the American government to support the new French Republic. But the Sedition Act criminalized, quote, false, scandalous, and malicious writing against government officials. Essentially, any criticism of Adams or his administration could land you in jail.
So basically, if you ran a Democratic-Republican newspaper, you could land in jail. And people actually did. Congressman Matthew Lyon of Vermont, he was fined and jailed for criticizing the Adams administration, but he still won re-election from his cell, which is pretty cool. And then James Callender, who was a pretty fiery Democratic-Republican journalist, he was also prosecuted. So these acts, they're going to chill dissent and they're going to inflame the Democratic-Republicans' argument that the Federalists privileged order and their own political security over liberty. And I think a total of 10 people were convicted under the Sedition Act. And the argument from Democratic Republicans is that this is political in nature. This isn't about national security.
No, it was weaponizing the power of the federal government against your political enemies. Well, in response to that, James Madison and Thomas Jefferson secretly penned resolutions asserting that states could interpose. So that's what they used the word interpose, to protect citizens when the federal government exceeded constitutional bounds. Kentucky's version went a little bit further, but the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions basically put forth this idea that today we call nullification. Which is a great word. If your parents ever
Got to
tell
get
you
that nullification. Got to get that nullification.
I always tell my
no,
students,
no.
if your parents are like, hey, you got to do such and such, you'd be like, I nullify you. I'm going to
I nullify you in the name of Madison and Jefferson.
We're going to nullify that. And basically, nullification just meant that a state could say, hey, that federal law is unconstitutional. We're going to declare it null and void within our state boundaries.
And so what was the immediate impact? Well, it was limited. Other states rejected the doctrine, but the idea planted seeds that resurfaced in later constitutional crises. And this is a powerful example of how constitutional interpretation is contested, not just in courts, but in the political arena.
So the 1790s are full of stuff, the late 1790s especially. And then we get into another new election in 1800, which we mentioned at the beginning. And this is mudslinging drama. The Federalists are going to paint Jefferson as a godless radical. And the Democratic Republicans are going to blast the Federalists and John Adams as monarchists. And this race is going to produce, as we said, this electoral tie between Jefferson and Aaron Burr, who were part of the same party, but there was no mechanism for electoral voters to distinguish between president and vice president. So this threw it to the House of Representatives.
Yeah, and after Hamilton basically decides that Jefferson will prevail with all these behind-the-scenes maneuvering, we get the ascendancy of Thomas Jefferson. And Jefferson's going to later call this the Revolution of 1800. And he said that because it was a revolution not of muskets but of principles and a change of governing philosophy via ballots, not bullets.
And he also thought he was bringing back the true spirit of the American Revolution. That was a political philosophy based on individual rights, individual liberty, and he believed that the Federalists had strayed so far from this during the 1790s.
And this is a huge deal. As Ms. Keltner pointed out earlier, that peaceful transfer really will become an American hallmark. There were so many countries around the world just waiting to see this thing crumble and fail, and it just didn't. So parties could rage, policy could swing, but constitutional legitimacy held. And in exam terms, pushers, it's a landmark for continuity and change in party control, continuity in constitutional order.
Right. So this is a huge moment for the country to have survived this initial stress test.
You know what this calls for? Let's go. 1790s. 1790s.
So the takeaways here is that, one, we see these ratification battles end in the ratification of the Constitution with the promise of the Bill of Rights and the kind of vagueness about how all this is going to play out for later generations.
We also saw Hamilton build a fiscal state with the assumption of states' debts, the creation of the national bank, and the Jeffersonian and Democratic-Republican opposition to define a rival vision to this Federalist system. And a compromise also to put our capital on the Potomac River in Washington, D.C.
And we saw the federal government flex in the Whiskey Rebellion, navigated neutrality through Jay and Pinckney treaties, and watched fear fuel the Alien and Sedition Acts and the constitutional pushback via the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions before a peaceful revolution of 1800 reset the course.
All right, we got a lot to figure out in the next episode, though.
Yeah, we do.
It's going to be a big one. Can't wait for it. So thanks for tuning in to A Push for All for this episode. If you liked it, be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple iTunes, YouTube. Leave us a review if you'd like. And if you got a topic you want us to cover, send us a message on Instagram at A Push for All.
Until next time, keep learning from yesterday to make sense of today.